Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'm Prudy. Welcome to my podcast. In this episode, I wanted to talk about how does the Indian political system work, what shapes political life in India, who governs India, who gets what, when, how, and why, who pays in and in what ways. India is called the world's largest democracy, but when you look at what is actually happened in India is that people do not actually run the country. Real power is concentrated in the hands of the ruling class. Big businesses, oppressor castes, elites, and political dynasties. Sure, we have elections, a parliament, and a judiciary, but when it comes to decisions that actually shapes people's lives, those are made in corporate boardrooms, party headquarters, and behind closed doors where billionaires shake hands with politicians. The system operates like a well oiled machine. The government passes laws that favor big business, the code protects those in power, the police and military are used to crush dissent, the media manufactures narratives to keep people distracted. And if the public starts demanding real change, they are met with arrests, internet shutdowns, sedition laws, and state violence. Democracy in India works for the rich. And what shapes political life in India? They'll tell you that politics is about democracy, representation, and governance. But in reality, if you see, it's about who owns what, who controls whom, and who gets to write the laws. And the major forces at play are caste and capital. India's ruling class isn't just the rich, it's overwhelmingly oppressor caste and deeply entrenched in the old feudal order. Economic power is caste power. The wealthiest people in India, almost all from dominant or oppressor caste backgrounds. The people cleaning sewers and working in bonded labor, these are all Dalits and Adivasis. And then there's Hindu nationalism. When you can give people jobs, land, and healthcare, what do? You give them an enemy. By turning Muslims, Christians, and Dalits into scapegoats, the ruling class keeps the working class divided while they loot the country. The more people talk about temples and beef bans, the less they talk about unemployment and corporate plunder. And then there's liberalism. Oh shit. Yeah, neoliberalism. Everything is for sale except your wages. Farmers are told to stop relying on MSPs and compete in the free market. Government hospitals and schools are starved of funds while billionaires get tax cuts and subsidies. Public sector companies are auctioned off to private corporations, and people are told privatize, privatization will quote unquote increase efficiency. You know what they actually mean? What it actually means? More profit for the rich, fewer rights for workers. And the only thing that is standing in the way of complete corporate control is a social movement, especially resistance of Dalit movements, Adivasi struggles, farmers' protests, workers' unions, and anti fascist activists. And how does the state respond to this? With surveillance, sedition cases, illegal detentions, and bulldozers. The system tolerates protests only when they are decorative. Real movements are criminalized. So, while they while they want you to believe politics is about policies and progress, it's really about who gets to exploit whom and how much they can get away with. Let's look at who governs India. Not you, not the people. The real rulers of India are a combination of billionaires and industrialists. If Mukesh Ambani wants a policy changed, it happens. If Adani wants a contract, he gets it. If Reliance wants to crush its competitors, the government makes sure it does. Then political dynasties. Elections may change faces, but power stays within the same casteist elite circles. Whether it's a BJP, Congress, or regional parties, most are run like family businesses. And in the police and military, the state's real job is not to protect people but to protect property and suppress resistance. Police brutality, custodial deaths, military occupation in Kashmir and the Northeast are not flaws in the system, they are the system. And the corporate media owned by billionaires, funded by corporate ads, and acting as a mouthpiece of ruling class, they'll make sure Ambani is called a visionary, while protesting farmers are called anti-national. They'll make sure every election is framed as a Modi versus Rahul spectacle rather than a battle over who controls wealth and power. So, when they tell you the people elect their leaders, what they mean is the rich select their candidates and the poor are told to pick between them. Now, let's see who gets what, when, how, and why. Simple. The rich get richer, the poor gets crumbs. Who owns land? Oppressor caste landlords and corporate giants. Who gets state contracts? Ambani and Adani and Tata. Who gets free handouts? Corporations through tax cuts and bailouts. And who gets a bill for all of this? The working class through indirect taxes and inflation. Dalits, Adivasis, and Muslims are promised development every election cycle only to see their homes demolished and their communities criminalized. Meanwhile, billionaires make record profits. This isn't a bug in the system, it's how the system is designed to work. And who pays and in what ways? The working class every single time. Who pays taxes? Not the billionaires because they get tax breaks and loopholes. It's the poor who pay through GST and rising fuel prices and inflation. Who funds government schemes? Not the rich. The working class does, through cuts to wages and pensions. Who funds corporate bailouts? Not Ambani, your taxes do. Who pays when a crisis happens? Farmers, Dalits, Adivasis, and workers who are left to fend for themselves. And what happens when the people demand their fair share? The government cracks down on them. Ask the farmers who were beaten for opposing corporate farming. Ask Dalit activists who are arrested under UAPA for demanding justice. Ask the workers who are fired for farming unions. The reality is, in India's largest democracy, you are free to vote but not free to demand real power. You are free to exist, but not free to threaten the rule of the rich. You can protest, but only if you lose. And this is all the illusion of democracy. The biggest trick the ruling class ever pulled was convincing people that electoral democracy means real democracy, that if you get to vote every 5 years, you must be free. But democracy doesn't just mean choosing a leader, it means having control over your life, your land, your labor. How much control do you have in your life? Like you can't choose how much wages you get, how much land you can have, how much light, how much you can live freely. India today is a corporate, casteist, and authoritarian state disguised as a democracy. It doesn't have to be this way, but change doesn't come from ballots alone, it comes from organized resistance. The ruling class will never give up power willingly, it must be taken down